Something you guys might not know about me is that I love old hot rods. I'll never forget when we cut the top off this car, or the first time I got to take it for a ride. I met a lot of great people and made a ton of memories. Unfortunately, it's been a few years since I've had one. When the Modern Maker podcast announced the Rockler Hobby Challenge, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. They announced the challenge in mid-September, so I started looking for a car. I was lucky to find a pretty complete 1931 Ford Model A that someone had just taken the body off of for another project. The challenge ended November 30th, so I only had a little over 2 months left. I immediately got to work building the floor and support structure. I did my best to use materials I already had around the shop. Everything started as a cardboard template. I figured the floor was the most important part, so I made a test piece out of OSB just to make sure everything was perfect before making it out of plywood. This box in the back will serve a few purposes. I'll divide it up so the top can be sort of a trunk. Under that will be clearance for the fuel tank that will get mounted to the frame. It also added a lot of rigidity to the rear structure. This structure will be left in place instead of removed like when people build canoes. I used a lot of blue tape and cardboard trying to get the body lines just right. I still ended up with some parts I wasn't happy with though. This panel behind the seat was too flat on top. I tried adding another piece to make it look a little better, but as you'll see in a minute, I wasn't happy with that either. I used hand tools and various sanders to shape the edges of the panels to match the curves of the body. I added ribs to the rear section. Fortunately, these were all the same shape, so I just made a template and copied it a bunch of times with a router. Once I was happy with the firewall and dash panels, I made them out of cypress. I've had this board sitting around for years and never had a good use for it. I'm happy to see it go into this project. I also made an additional panel to go around the seat so the sides of it would be covered by the body. I made this one from oak since it's what I had. I spent a lot of time fine-tuning the shape of each part to make sure it followed the body line just right. The entire structure got a couple coats of sealer. I've had this pile of locally sourced, rough-cut cypress sitting around for a couple years. I planed it down to about 7/8 of an inch and cut it into 1/4 inch strips. These bits are what will make the strips fit together. Each gets run through the router 2 times. The first will cut a bead on one side. Then they get flipped around and a flute gets cut on the other. If everything goes right, you'll end up with a pile of strips that look just like this. I made a bunch of these banding clamps before starting this project. They were a huge help. The material I had wasn't long enough, so I cut an angle at the end of each strip to make a scarf joint. I had to do this until I got to the top of the cockpit opening. This was a pretty painless process until I got to the parts where the body started to curve. Not only did I have a round shape of the body to deal with, I also needed the pieces to twist and bow down. You can see how much these pieces needed to twist in the cowl section. I kept working my way up the passenger side. When I finally made it to the top, I cut the excess strips off right down the middle of the car. To make the intersecting strips of the driver's side fit up nicely, I had to taper the ends. I used a jig to get it cut close and refine the fit on my belt sander. I decided to add a spine down the center of the tail section. This probably would have been easier to do before everything was cut and assembled, but I didn't think about it. I made a jig for my router that attached to each rib and cut a dado. I transferred these slots onto the spine and cut them out with a jigsaw. Flexible strips of metal and plastic are really helpful when building anything with curves. I watched a lot of videos on people building strip canoes in preparation for this project. One thing that never occurred to me is just how long this process takes. I spent a lot of time waiting for glue to dry. After struggling with it for a while, I decided to try steam bending. Stuff was starting to go a little smoother, but was still super slow. On Thanksgiving morning, with just a few days left, I made a jig to help pre-bend a bunch of strips. They still needed a little motivation to get bent and twisted to the right shape, but it was much easier now. Finally, I was able to cut the cockpit opening. I made a flexible shape pattern with blue tape and packing tape and transferred the lines to the other side. I finished the last strip on November 30th. After a little sanding, I called this part of the project done. Obviously, there's still a ton left to do. Once I get the fuel tank and battery set up, I'll need to get it running and do some other mechanical work. I'm still on the fence about hopping up the stock banger or going with a V8 flathead. I need to make a louvered aluminum hood and side panels. I also have some metal work to do at the rear of the car. And of course, I can't forget about the finish. Total Boat was nice enough to send me over a bunch of goodies. I'll be doing a separate video on fiberglassing the body and some of the other more interesting parts of the build. Thank you so much to everyone who supported me along the way. I was really running out of steam towards the end, and everyone's helpful words really kept me going. Thanks everyone, I'll see you all next time.